For my first thematic media production, I would like to look at freedom of speech in cyberspace in Module 3. Specifically, in schools in British Columbia. This is North Peace Secondary School in Fort St. John, and we get our internet through the Provincial Learning Network, also known as PLNet. And PLNet actively blocks websites on the internet for various reasons. And we'll look at a few, and we'll talk about how my principles have been guided partly because of this. From the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, under the Fundamental Freedoms section, everyone has the following fundamental freedoms: freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, including freedom of the press and other media of communication. I'm going to access a website called martinlutherking.org. And when I do this in school, I get what's called the big red screen. And it says, "Warning, this connection has been refused. The internet site you are attempting to access has been designated by a web classification service as containing material that contravenes the BC government's internet usage policy." I was trying to go to martinlutherking.org, and this web classification service, called WebSense, classifies this website as racism and hate. martinlutherking.org is actually a white supremacist website. So after speaking with our law teacher, I learned something new. Is that Section 2, Part B of the Freedom Charters and Rights is actually subject to the Notwithstanding Clause, which means the government can strike it down if need be in various ways. And there's other law, including in the criminal code, that talks about hate speech that has never been struck down in a Charter of Rights challenge. Hopefully it never is. But the government could use the Notwithstanding Clause to say this is a reasonable intrusion on your rights. So is it not a reasonable intrusion on the rights of my students to block a website like martinlutherking.org that promotes hate? I think the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is for the people, not specifically for the individual. Although sometimes it is for the individual and it's appropriate. But for the individual that tries to undermine the rights of many others through the promotion of hate literature or video or sound that promotes hate, I don't think the Charter applies for them. We keep our library locked after hours, not to keep people out during the day, but to protect our valuables at night. Our books, our resources, computers, other valuable things we keep here. We decide what goes on these shelves. We decide which videos goes on there. Sometimes it's because of costs, but most it's because we decided as a community that it best serves our needs. So why can't we do that on the internet as well? Donald F. Thiel, in his article Canada's Censorship and the Internet, talks about filtering software like WebSense and makes a commentary that private companies making decisions on what could be blocked would be against Section 2 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. He also mentions that political regimes could use this kind of filtering software to block things based on political reasons. Theo mentioned that companies like WebSense make the ultimate decision and there's no recourse as to what gets blocked. But I had the experience with WebSense and PLNet that they had blocked the Yahoo briefcase. And I used that to transfer lessons that I built at home to my school. And I was able to write to them and ask them to unblock Yahoo briefcase, which they did later on that day. As for the BC government having a nefarious reason to be blocking things, sometimes you might think that they have nefarious reasons for what they do in education, but I don't honestly think they're trying to push a political agenda via what they're blocking on the internet. So if we look to Canada as a model of our community, as our nation, our province, our cities, and if in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms we have a notwithstanding clause where the government of the day can decide to limit the rights of a few to better the others, I don't think there's anything wrong as a school community or a province to do the same. While blocking things on the internet is not desirable, it's oftentimes necessary.